It is the first week of Penn State hockey. I'm excited about it. I believe they open up the road against Long Island off the top of my head.
Okay.
Um, I'm it kind of hit me today. Like the weather hasn't been October-y today, but I was like, oh, it's the second day of October. Like there's NHL hockey next week. Um, I am optimistic about the Penn State men's hockey team this year. Um, I am not. I think my expectations compared to last year are a little bit lower, just given they lost a lot of their scoring. I think I wrote down it was 45% of their goals they essentially lost to graduation or the NHL or well, not transfer, but kind of moving on. Um, to me, I think the goal this year is to make the tournament. You play in a very stacked conference this year. I think every team except for maybe one was ranked in the initial poll when it came out. In fact, when the initial poll came out this time around, I had only saw the Big Ten media poll, and Penn State was finished to pick sixth or picked to finish sixth. And I was like, what the hell? And then I remembered that you've got Notre Dame, Michigan, um, Ohio State, all kind of sort of ahead of you. It's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I think Penn State, and now Penn State's number 16. I think that's very fair. But I think the goal this year, even though they were one goal away from, going to the Frozen Four, and I think that is still probably the ultimate goal, or that would be the first high water mark that Penn State still hasn't achieved yet. I think that is the goal this year is just to make the tournament, be good enough to make the tournament, survive non-conference play. Their non-conference schedule this year is pretty pathetic. It's kind of taking the football model of, okay, like conference is going to beat us up. Let's not really have to worry ourselves too much in the non-conference play. There's no reason that Penn State, shouldn't have more than one or two losses in non-conference play this year, just with who they play. So I think the other thing is you got Liam Soulier back, and I think that's a big thing in college hockey. If you've got a good goalie, you can go a long way. Steve, what is your expectation for Penn State men's hockey this year?
I think they've got decent leadership. Like I said, lost a lot of goals, but I think they've got some decent leadership. It'll be interesting to see the vibe of the team, just what their personality plays out being. And I think, make the tournament. I mean, they're basically starting the season on the bubble, right? Sixth in the conference and 16th in the national poll. They're basically starting the season on the bubble, and they're playing. They're going to, in theory, probably in reality, do great in non-conference, build up a record. It's going to look interesting. And then you're going to be hoping for splits during the conference play, right? And maybe steal one, somewhere along the line, because it's just the conference is that tough. I think if they don't make the tournament, right, because you're one goal away from being the Frozen Four last year, it's a disappointment, right? You can't to go from there down. Not that programs don't, but you're looking for that consistency. And I appreciate it's a challenge, and they don't on paper have the talent that some other teams have in terms of NHL draft picks and things like that. But they've got, I don't know if that's what Guy Gadowski wants either. I think he wants his players to play as a team and find that bigger than us approach. And when they do that, it works. So my expectation, I think, is tournament, right? I think if they miss out, even though it's a really tough conference, right, and it's going to be a challenge to finish in the top 16 nationally if you only finish in the top 5 in your conference. But it's, arguably the best conference in college hockey. So we'll see how it goes.
I was thinking about it through like that lens. You hit on it there a little bit of do you go build these super nuts teams like the Michigan teams for the last really 3 years have had essentially every Hughes brother and Adam Fantelli and all these other just insanely good dudes. And even this year, you've got Dylan Duke and Rutger McGrody, and it's like, okay, like, where do you go the Penn State way? And I appreciate that. I think it seems like there's an emphasis on team building, and I think that is you look at some of the teams that have done well. Obviously, like the Denver teams come to mind, that Union team that won the title. Like you find that one dude that is a dude, and then you have a good cohesive team the rest of the way, you can go pretty far. I think it is kind of what we've learned with college hockey. And I think that is, it appears to be Guy Gadowski's approach. I don't know who that person is. I think obviously like the Aiden Fink thing is exciting, but I don't know. I I think expectations are reasonably set at making the tournament. Let me ask you this: should that should be the expectation every year? Like that is the baseline expectation, and much in the way talk about that, especially in the future with Penn State football. Okay, I was just making
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
we're
I
on
think
the
so. I
same
mean,
page
I
here.
think that's what we're led to believe the program is, right? From facility to support to in the conference, they're a top 20 program every year. If you're top 20, you got to beat four other teams to make the tournament, basically, you know. So yeah, I think it should be tournament every year. And it kind of goes back to what Pat Romano said a little bit about, you know, Penn State, blue collar guy, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that I see that always in football, right? Like, because not that the players aren't hardworking and whatever else, but we know these are 5-star players in some instances and people who are recruited to be here. And then I like in hockey and even in wrestling, right? There's not a maybe one, and maybe that's what happens at 125 this year. There's not a dud in that lineup, a guy that wasn't recruited by everybody. In some ways, hockey has the ability to play out that blue collar, workmanlike, go at it approach, that mentality than almost any other sport in some ways. So, and that's what I think is enjoyable about them. I think they're not as watching them, they're not all draft picks and whatever else. They got to figure out how to do it together to make it work. And when they do it, it's kind of fun. When they don't, okay, but when they do, it's fun.
This will be the 10th year of Pagula. Um, this will be, but let's see, the 11th season. Steve, you've been to a lot of Penn State hockey games. You've been to more than I have. Any that particularly stand out, or any player that particularly stands out?
It was like a
For
7
you?
nothing game against Notre Dame a couple of years ago. That was a lot of fun as a fan. They just beat the snot out of them at Pagula. I think Pagula itself is the best part when it's working. I think
It's a cool
not that there haven't
experience.
been great. Evan Barrett might have been one of the best players I've seen on the ice there in terms of sheer talent. And there have been a lot of them, but he just felt. I mean, he went pro. It felt like I don't know. There was a different vibe when he was on the ice. Um, uh, I think Xander Lampa this year is going to be an interesting dude, and I think there's a mentality there of toughness without taking a penalty, or what's that line? And I think that's that for a team like this, it's going to be finding that toughness without ending up in the box. That's going to be the difference in them being average or really pretty good. Because you gotta find a way to skate that line to deliver blows, to send a message of who you are, to not get overwhelmed by anybody without ending up in the box and costing your team.
And I think that's kind of the way Penn State has played. I think is finding that line, and
Right.
the team. It's a team that like can play on the edge of that line, or right at the cusp of that line, is a much better hockey program than it is necessary, or necessarily could be, given the talent kind of going back to that part of the equation. All
Exactly.
right.